it's Amy here, and today we are going to learn how to create if statements within Microsoft Excel. Don't worry, we're not going to just cover the basics. We are going to learn how to create nested ifs and so much more. By the end, you are going to be an expert and you're going to know all of my little tips and tricks along the way. So with that being said, let's nerd out. Okay, so the if statement is one of the most popular functions in Excel, and it allows us to make a logical comparison and return a value if it is true or if it is false. So in this formula bar, I'm going to enter if and then tab to pull the formula. And the first item is that logical test. So in this table, we have student percentage grades. And in order for them to pass, they need to receive 70% or higher. So let's create that logical test component by selecting their grade and then going greater than or equal to zero point 0.7 for that 70%. And then I'm just going to add a comma. And if that is true, so if the student has passed, then we want this cell to say pass. And we do need to enter text in the formula within quotation marks in order for it to work effectively. Now, if it's false, the only exception to that rule that I just said is that if we enter false or true, that text does not need to be put into quotations because Excel recognizes true or false as text. So we can just now pop a closing bracket, enter. Now I'm just going to double click and drag this formula down. So we can see here that this formula is populating and it is working correctly. As Sarah unfortunately got 62, which is below that 70, and she is returning a false value. Whereas John, 85, above that 70, and his has returned a pass. So this is just a quick introduction to identify the building blocks of the if statement and set us up for the rest of this video. Now we are going to look at absolute references, which provides a lot more flexibility when we are creating if statements. So let's see what that looks like. So in the formula bar, I'm going to enter equals if, and we are going to stick with that logical comparison again of if their percentage grade is greater than or equal to. However, what I am going to do now is select this variable over here, and I'm going to press F4 to make it an absolute reference. As you can see, the dollar signs have now been added. So now if that percentage grade is greater than the value in F2, we are going to return pass F4. And if it's not true, then we are going to select fail. And once again, F4, closing bracket, and enter. So now I'm going to drag that down and we can see that once again, that formula is working. Now, the great thing about absolute references is that we can change this percentage variable right here. Let's keep an eye on Sarah and see what happens if we change this to 6. So we can see right away that this has just made our formula more dynamic because instead of going in to these cells and updating this formula, we can simply update these values. So as another example, if we want to return subscribe to this channel, if you are enjoying my video, then we can easily update that cell and then the formula updates appropriately. Now we are going to look at adding a calculation into the if statement. So in this table here, we have pet product names, projected sales, and actual sales. And we want to add a column to return the value over the projected sales. So let's take a look at this if statement. We go equals if actual sales or greater than the projected sales, then we are going to return actual sales minus projected sales. If it is false, we are going to return 0. So if we click enter, then once again, we can just double click to drag that down. And here we can see that this formula has returned a 0 when projected sales were higher than actual sales. But for example, for the pet toys, we were 50 over the projected sales. So that is just a quick introduction into how you can add a calculation into the true or false values to provide further customization within the if statement. Now we are going to dive into the nested if statement. So we have this table that has our sales reps as well as their total sales for this period. And over here, I have sales classes. So if they were above 5,000, they're level 3. If they're above 7,500, then they're level 2. And if they're over 10,000, then they are going to be in that level 1 sales class. So let's take a look at how we can create this nested if statement. Start off, we're going to say the logical test is going to be if their total sales are greater than or equal to this level 1 value, quick absolute reference, then we are going to return level 1. Now, for that false value, we are going to add an if statement. So then we are going to go if that is not true. So if their sales are not greater than 10,000, then we are going to say if their total sales are greater than or equal to this next level, then we are going to return level 2. And if it's false, then we are going to add once again another if statement. So this third if statement is going to say if they're not above 10,000 and they're not above 7,500, then what's going to be the next logical test? So we are going to go if total sales, you guessed it, is greater than or equal to 5,000, then we are going to return level 3. Now we can add our closing brackets because we have entered all of the logical tests that we want to do. So I'm going to do closing bracket, and you'll see here that this closing bracket is purple and that is closing this if statement. So now I need to add another closing bracket, and that is a red bracket which matches this red bracket, so that is closing that if statement. Now I need to add one more closing bracket which is black, and that matches that bracket, so I have now closed this if statement. So sometimes if you forget a bracket, then Excel might give you a warning. Sometimes it will just push it through, but you do just need to keep an eye on those closing brackets. So now we can press enter. And if we double click and drag this down, then we can see that once again, that formula is working. So that is super cool and a great way to show you how we can use nested if statement. You can nest up to 64 if statements. Yep, 64. That honestly sounds like a lot. And as you can see here, this is already quite difficult to read. So as a tip, what you can do is you can press Alt Enter, and you could put each of your if statements onto their own line. So once again, Alt Enter, and we can just see here now that we have nice and clean little mini nested if statements that allow us to navigate it a bit better. However, you can definitely imagine that if we had 64 of these, I would be lost. So even though you can do up to 64 nested if statements, it's not recommended, and there's likely a better tool within the Excel toolbox, potentially a lookup function like VLOOKUP that could return an accurate response for you with a little bit less legwork. So the last thing that I wanted to show you on the nested if statement is very important, so please stick around. When we are entering these formulas, this is a different formula. And you'll see here that in my sales classes, we actually have this going from 5,000, 7,500 to 10,000. And in the previous page, we had it at 10,000, 7,500, and then 5,000 at the bottom. So previously we did top to bottom, and in this example, we have gone bottom to top, and I just want to use this for demonstration purposes. So you'll see here that these are all returning a level 3 class, and that's because when Excel runs an if statement, so you'll see here that my first logical test is if their sales are greater than 5,000. If that is true, then it is going to end the if statement here, and it is going to return that level 3 value always. It's not even going to look at these other conditions because that first logical test returned the true value. So when you are working with numbers, and similar to an example like this, you want to ensure that you work from top to bottom. Here we can see that other page, and this is where we have that top class. That 6,000 didn't meet that logical test. It didn't even meet the second logical test, but Excel has to work through those logical tests in order for it to get to that level 3 value. Otherwise, you're going to end in this error where everything meets that first logical test and it's not going to return the accurate value that you are looking for. So just something to keep in mind when you are building these nested if statements. All right, so that wraps up this video, and I do hope that I've helped you discover your inner nerd today. And I also hope that I have helped you master if statements within Microsoft Excel. Thanks for nerding out. We'll see you again.